going. Now, we'll let you know. If you was a weak slave, you would got whipped all the time. They would tie you up to a pole, and they would whip you. But if you was a strong slave, they didn't mess with you. Well, they wound up moving me, and they moved me to another plantation. That's the free land. Everybody say free land. Free land. Well, guess what? We had a lot of freedom. We went out, we did our work. In the evening, he let us go. Well, while most of the slaves, when we had free time, they would go off. Some of them would go drinking. Some of them would go have relationships. Some of them would go play. But I would go and I would conduct reading time. And I would have maybe 20 to 30 slaves with me. Some of those slaves were as young as 10 and as old as 60. Somebody went and snitched on me. Yeah, somebody went and snitched on me. The next thing I know, they come all the masters. They wound up beating me and they took me to jail. But before they took me to jail, I'll never forget this one important moment. Myself and a couple other slaves, we were in the kitchen. Miss Katie, she was making biscuits. Now, because of my education, my self-education, I used to write passes for the slaves. Well, all of a sudden I looked out the window, and as I looked out the window, I saw 3 horses coming. But something strange was about these horses. These horses had 6 legs. Raise your hand if you ever saw a horse with 6 legs. All right, I got one way back there, I got one here. All right? Well, anyway, when the horses came up, they tied them up, and the masters, they got off and they came in the house. And they said, where's that Freddy at? They were looking for me. Well, those other 3 legs were slaves that they had caught who was trying to escape with passes that I had written. That other slave that was in the kitchen with me, he asked me, he said, Freddy, what should I do with my pass? I said, you need to take that pass and put it in between that biscuit and eat it. You know what he did? He ate that pass. You know what I did with my pass? I ate that pass. That's right. And guess what? They could not find the pass for Miss Katie. Miss Katie. She called me a double scoundrel dog. You want those passes and you won't pay for it. Well, they took us to jail. And when they took us to jail, ladies and gentlemen, I had the best time of my life in that jail. You know why I had the best time of my life in that jail? Because who said food? Yes. And you know why else? They had a nice bed there. And the third thing is, I could clean myself. Hygiene. Well, Master U.R. came, and he got me. And he said, I have a good mind to send you down to Philadelphia. I'm sorry, Mississippi. If he would have sent me down to Mississippi, you would have never heard of me. Well, Master U.R. let me out. I learned to trade. I started making my own money. How much you think I was bringing home a week? $5,000. How much? No. $1,000. No. Anybody else? How much you said? How much you said? How much you said? I heard somebody say $5. Who said 5? I don't know. All right, guess what? That's right. I was making $6 a week. But you know what? I had to take that $6 I went overseas because I wrote my first book in 1845 entitled The Narrative and Life of Frederick Douglass. In that book, I told on everybody. And my daughter Anna, she died from leukemia at 10 years old. It's a disease that is still around. But nowadays, they have a cure for it. They didn't have a cure back then. So anyway, when I got back, we was in Rochester, New York. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't like the way things were going. So, in 1860, there was a presidential election. I understand that in 2024, come November, there will be a presidential election. In 1860, there were 3 men running for president of the United States. One of those men was a man by the name of Stephen Douglas. There was another man by the name of Mr. Richardson. And then there was a 6 feet 4-inch man, tall and slim, black hair. As a matter of fact, he's on a penny. Anybody know who that is? Abraham Lincoln. Now, Abraham Lincoln, his plan was not to increase slavery, but to bring slavery to an end. And I liked him. Well, I wound up getting a meeting. At the White House. I was standing on the stairwell. I was the only black man on that stairwell inside the White House. When I heard somebody shout, "Frederick Douglass." Now wait a minute. Let me go back. The name that I was given as a child was Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. When I got to New Bedford, I ran into a family with the last name of Johnson. By this time, my name was Johnson. We talked, and they came up with another name for me. The name of Douglas. But this time, Douglas with 2 S. So that way, when you pronounce my name as Douglas. Somebody say that. You got 2 S, you make sure you say the S. Douglas. So, when they called my name, Frederick Douglass, all the white guys that were standing there, they called me all kind of in names because they were mad and they were jealous because I got to visit. Well, when I walked in the Oval Office, there was a big long desk, and the man sitting behind the desk, he rose up, and as he rose up, he was tall. And I looked up at him, and I shook his hand, and I said, "Mr. President," and he said, "Frederick Douglass, it's great to meet you. But I must say, I heard you've been saying some bad things about me. Have a seat," he said. Well, for the young men in here, I want you to acknowledge something. For the young men, I want you to see something. When I sat down, I did not sit down in a chair as such. I did not have my hands in my pocket or in my pants. Take a lesson. When I sat down as an astute gentleman. Authority. When you see a man sit down like this, that means that man has authority. And when I sat down like this, he said, "What can I do for you, Mr. Douglas?" I said, "Sir, I come first of all, thank you very much for this time to speak with you. I come today because I have 3 things on my mind." And he said, "What is it?" I said, "Number 1, the Civil War has begun. And sir, we cannot win this war with one hand behind our back. You are going to need black soldiers to help you win this war. I have you know, 131,000 black men joined into that fight. 38,000 of those black men were killed. But think about how many of those black men won. Well, watch this. And I said that, sir, when we win this war, my only ask for a few things. That these black men be treated equally. That means they get the same pay as white men. That means they get to sleep in the dorms like the white men. That means they get to eat like the white man. And if they are captured with dignity and respect like the white man. Number two, I told them, the women of this country, sir, black, white, all of them. On my mind, sir, I would love for you to pass a bill that states that women can vote. And lastly, the most importantly, sir, that all black people in this country is free. Well, Mr. President, he got up and he went to the window and he looked out the window. And as he looked out the window, guess what he saw? He saw 100 years into the future. He saw August the 28th, 1963. He saw the Lincoln Monument. And down a little bit on the stairwell, he saw a 5 feet 6 inch man giving a speech. And that man that he saw was no other than Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he was saying, free at last, free at last, free at last. Now hold up. We are now in 2024. That was 1963. That was over 60 years ago. Young people, listen to what I'm about to say. If Abraham Lincoln wouldn't have done what he did when he did it, black people in this country would not be free from slavery until 1963, when I, not Frederick, but I would have been 7 years old. Well, Mr. Lincoln came back, I stood up, he shook my hand, and he said, sir, we will see what we can do, but we don't want to rush it. I shook his hand, and I went outside the White House. When I got outside the White House, my chest expanded, because I felt big for being the first black man in the White House. Not Barack Obama. So anyway, that was in October of 1862. 3 months later, 90 days later, January the 1st, I want you to look at these pictures of me. You don't see a smile, you don't see a tear on my face. As a matter of fact, somebody said, is that me for real? Listen to this. I am the most photographed person of that time. The only person who has more pictures than me is a man by the name of Mark Twain. He's the only one. And in all my pictures, you never see me smile, you never see me laughing, you never see me sitting bent over, you see me sitting straight up. I wanted people to see that though I am a black man, that I have dignity about myself. And these pictures that you see, as a matter of fact, this is me at 19 years old. This is me at 27 years old. My first book is here. Well, while we was in church on that December the 31st night of 1862, that morning, through the doors, we saw him coming in. It was a soldier, and he ran up to the front, and he shook the hand of the pastor, and he went in his jacket. He came out and he unraveled some papers, and as he read the papers, he said, on to share this. And guess what? They told me you can move your family over here. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But you know what I told them? I said, I got to go back to America because there are more black folks over there that are suffering, and I want to help them get free. So I came back to America. As the time goes on, I want to let you know, I became the first black sheriff of Washington, D.C. His children allowed me to go into his bedroom. As we went in the bedroom, I sat next to him. And you know what he called me? He called me Sheriff. I said, no, don't call me that. Call me like you used to call me when I was a slave. He said, I can't do that. I said, yeah, you got my permission. So he said, Freddie, that's what they used to call him. He said, Freddie, I meant no harm. I knew you was going to be somebody. I said, yeah, now you can say that. And then I said, what about my grandmother, Betty? I didn't tell you what they did to my grandmother. My grandmother took care of my master's family. Took care of my master when he was a little boy. But when my grandmother got old and senile, they put her out in the woods in a cabin by herself. And when she died, they didn't have a proper funeral like you all have. They took her body, dug a hole, and just threw her body in the hole. My grandmother, yes, that hurted me. And I mentioned that too, Master, you are. And he said, Freddie, I had nothing to do with that. He said, I'm proud of you though. Very proud of what you have done with your life. Well, after I left, 2 weeks later, what happened to Master Heward? He died. Well, another marker in my life, I became the first black man to be the president of the Freeman Savings Bank. I was in charge of $1 million bank. When that bank started losing and going bankrupt, guess what I did? I went in my personal savings and I put $10,000 into the bank. And I paid for a lot of the people that lost their money in that bank. But eventually the bank went out of business. Also, in the year of 1888, are you ready for this? I'm getting ready to ask the dumbest question possible. Ma'am, can I have your permission to ask this dumb question? How many of you all were born, was here on earth, living, when Barack Obama was the president? Raise your hand. Okay? Are you ready for this? He was the president in 2008. Alright? He did it 2 terms. What? Hold on. I got something else for you. I got something else for you, and I hope you can handle this. Though President Barack Obama was the first black between me and the government here in America, and I resigned my position. By the time of 1884, my beautiful wife, Anna, after 40 years of marriage, she died. Ladies and gentlemen, I was heartbroken. I shut down. Nobody knew where I was. Matter of fact, it got so bad people thought I was dead. But one day there was a knock on the door, on my front door. I told my daughter, Rosetta, I said, Rosetta, answer the door. When she opened the door, it was no other than, are you ready for this? Harriet Tubman. I knew it. When she came in, the first thing she did was Rosetta, my daughter standing there, she hugged me. And she said, Fred, you're going to be all right. You're a good man. You're going to be all right. And you know what I did? I hugged her back and I had tears coming out my eyes. And then I pulled back and I looked her in the eyes. And I said, thank you, Harriet. I really needed that. Well, Harriet left. I didn't see her anymore. But life went on. And I was 66 years old at the time. I had a young lady working in my office. And I asked this young lady, do she like Bach? Anybody ever heard of Bach? Classical music. And she said yes. We went to the concert to see Bach. And would you believe? Shortly after that, that young lady and we got married. Her name was Helen Pitts. And yes, I will admit, she was a white lady. My daughter, Rosetta, she denounced me. My sons, they denounced me. That means they did not want to be a part of me anymore. And Rosetta had some names for Miss Helen Pitts. I'm not going to tell you what they were, just imagine. Well, anyway, we wound up leaving the country for another 2 years. And we came back. We came back from overseas, England. We went to Russia, and we went to other countries. And when we came back, I went out on another speaking engagement. I came home, and when I came home, I was walking up the stairwell. And as I walked up the stairwell, as a matter of fact, I just came home from speaking to a good friend of mine, or speaking with a good friend of mine. Her name was Susan B. Anthony. Anybody heard of her? Yeah. Yes. All right. As I was saying, I was walking up the stairwell, I jerked. When I jerked, Helen, she said, Frederick, stop playing. And I gotta let you know, I had 21 grandchildren. Unfortunately, there was a lot of death that took place in my house because we didn't have a cure back then. So I lost some of my grandchildren. Well, when I jerked and I fell down the stairs, I wound up having a stroke, and immediately after, I had a heart attack.
Did you die?
That day was February the 20th, 1895. I was at the age of 77.
So you died?
Helen, she came, and she picked me up, and she started crying and screaming, help, help. Well, they didn't have the kind of service that you all have today. Well, they gathered my body, and they wound up having my body in a nice casket, and I laid in state in the Washington Capitol. I became the first black man to lay in state in the Washington Capitol. In case you don't know this, when the president of this country dies, what happens is, wherever they are, they will fly them to Washington, D.C. And then they will have them laying their casket with their body inside of it, laying can come and visit. As a matter of